Architectural Builder Supply is pleased to present you with this recording of the technical question that is listed in the title of this video.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
You have them in stock.
Which item?
It's an LB4322-400-600.
No, I do not stock those.
Okay. Any idea who might?
No.
All right. Well, I thank you for that.
I wouldn't look. And the reason I say that is I sell a lot of Bomber. We're their largest customer in the state of Florida in terms of sales. I can't tell you the last time someone ordered a 22 variant of this hinge. So, you know.
Well, you're obviously familiar with Bomber then?
I'm intimately familiar with Bomber. I've been to both of their plants. My family's been buying from Bomber since since who knows? Since
well, I'm not even sure
Johnson
if this is the
president.
correct number. I've got the hinge, the broken hinge off and in my hand, but nobody can tell me what the number on it crosses over to. Maybe you can. It says it's a 653M door closer.
Yeah, it's not the the 653M is if you were to call Underwriters Laboratory and say, pull up your record 653M, they're going to tell you that that's the record locator for the fire test that was done on that hinge. That's all it means. So all of the LB series will likely say 653M. So the way that you can eliminate all of the guesswork is to review the template for the 4322 and with a tape measure compare that against your existing hinge to make sure that everything lines up. And once you've confirmed that, you're off to the races.
Okay. There is another number on here, an R number. Does that mean anything?
It does. It doesn't tell me the hinge, though. The heart number is not on that hinge.
Okay. Yeah, the R number on it is R4667.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't tell you anything either then.
NFPA 80, which is the model standard for which building codes are determined when it comes to fire safety, tells us that all spring hinges must, when used in fire-rated applications, bear visual evidence of the fire test. And while your door may or may not be fire-rated, the numbers you've read off to me is that visual evidence that an inspector, when scrutinizing the opening for compliance with fire code, would be looking for to say, this hinge is good to go. Because not every single acting spring hinge has a UL listing or label. Spring hinges have to not only be listed, which means they're tested, but they have to be labeled. Means you can look at the hinge and see the stamp. Like if you look at the edge of your lock on the outside of your house, it likely will have some stamping on it, and that's the same sort of concept. They stick it on faceplates for latch bolts. And so that's what that tells us, that it's compliant with NFPA 80. And any local building code that adopts NFPA 80 into their code, it then is it's not should be done, it shall be done, meaning when you install that, you shall use, meaning mandatory. That's what that tells us.
So, with your knowledge of hinges, is there another hinge that would replace this one that would have the same, screw pattern and the same functionality?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Whoever the Permador is what I think that pattern is. You could call Permador and see if they've got any hinges on the shelf.
Okay, Permador. Okay, that's another new name for me. Could you spell it?
When you are in my website looking at the hinge, just scroll down to the extended description, and you'll see the indication to not only Permador, but the link to the template as well, which I would avoid the work on the phone. I would look at the template, go to the door with that printed out with my tape measure, and if all the dimensions line up, you're in good shape. But finding one in stock, I don't know anything about Permador, PERMA door. I know that they make or made residential doors, but beyond that, I don't know.
So at this point in time, how quick could you get this hinge for me?
3 weeks would be a generality.
Oh, cheapers.
On the right side of the page where it says add to cart, the lead time is listed right below that.
Okay. And there's no way to expedite that, or?
There's two answers to the lead time question. One's the truth and the other's not.
Okay. Well, I'm looking for the truth then.
Yep.
But, well, at any rate, it sounds like I'm kind of SOL on the whole thing. I did notice, and maybe you can tell me, I looked in Amazon when I punched this number in. Amazon comes up with one, but it's a different manufacturer, and I wouldn't dare do it because I don't know if it would be the same.
Amazon, when it comes to hardware, is a hit or miss proposition.
Right.
That's why they have a no hassle return, because it's the quantity of that's not what I thought I was getting, and the fact that they can't provide any technical support whatsoever. That's just how they provide technical support. If it doesn't work, send it back. No harm, no foul.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you're thinking that you could probably get it, I've called a number of places and they don't have it, or they could order it or whatever. I even talked to Bommer Manufacturing, and they said that, they would have to, take an order, and it would be at least a couple of weeks out as well. But you've been more helpful than any of them, so I suspect maybe I should just have you order it and ship it to me. Is that something I can do? Or?
Yeah, we encourage that type of behavior.
Okay, well, I would like to do that then, and hopefully it's the correct hinge. But
well, I would, if it's not, it won't be worth sending back. I would very much encourage you to confirm that it is. It's an easy task with a tape measure, because
and I've measured the outside diameter, and I've measured the, from the top of the hinge to the top right screw hole and down, and all of that. That all appears to be correct. But what threw me is, on the Boomer site itself, or Bommer site, it shows the 4322, but I'm not sure what the -400-600 means. Is it fits in a 400 application as well as a 600 application, whatever that is?
I'm sorry. So when you used the exact part number, I assumed you knew what all that meant. So the 400 tells us the size, that the hinge is 4 inch tall and 4 inch wide.
Correct.
Okay, so we're good there. The 600 is the finish. 600 means it's prime coat over steel. Do you want a hinge?
Fine.
Okay. Do you want a prime coat hinge, or do you want some sort of finish so you don't have to paint it?
Well, what color is the prime coat?
Gray.
Kind of
like a light gray.
Yeah.
There's no tan. It would be a light gray.
Well, and I'm guessing that she would have to paint it to match, because it's kind of a cream color is what the paint is on it. But
so your existing is painted. Okay, you want the 600 then, because you have to paint it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, and do these come in pairs or individual?
They're priced and sold per hinge.
Okay, because some places list them as 2 per package.
They're packed. There'll be 2 in a box if you bought 2, but the unit price is for a hinge.
Well, and I'm guessing that there was a top one and a bottom one, so I'm guessing that's how they should be installed, correct?
Incorrect. The top location would be the least desirable of all places to put the spring hinge.
Oh, okay.
70%
it has one on
of the
top and on the bottom.
Yeah, that's wrong. 70% of the weight of the door is borne by that top hinge. You do not want a spring hinge, which is a non-load-bearing hinge, to do any of the work of carrying the load as much as possible. So bottom and middle, if you have 2, hinges is where ideally they'd be placed.
Okay.
What hinge are you replacing?
How do you mean?
So why are you replacing one or both hinges?
Well, because we opened the door here yesterday afternoon, and as I opened it, we heard a loud snap, and now the door, there's no spring tension to close it at all. And if I stick a small drift punch into the adjustment hole on both of them, there's no spring tension there at all. They just both flip back and forth.
Oh, they both broke? Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what degree of opening does your door go to?
Just a 90.
Okay, so be sure to follow the instructions when you're setting the tension. Don't exceed the quantity of holes prescribed, and if you find that you need to in order to get the door closed, you need more spring hinge.
Okay. Well, and how often? I mean, once these things are set, when we moved into this house 5 years ago, and I didn't like the way the door closed. It didn't seem like it had enough tension on it, and I didn't have instructions and I didn't have the tool for it. But I'm kind of a tool guy, so I went out and got a hardened steel punch that I could push in there and pull the roll pin out, and I moved it over and moved the pin one more hole, and then the door seemed to close, much, much better. But
and which
now
hinge
it's
did you
5
do
years.
that in?
Pardon me?
Which hinge did you do that in?
Both of them, the top
Okay.
and bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's
It's just a standard hinge in the middle. I mean,
yeah, definitely switch that. Put that at the top. The quantity of hole, and the problem is you don't know how many holes of tension were originally there, so you won't exceed 4 holes when you set these, so you'll have a baseline.
Sure.
It could be that there were already 7 holes of tension, you know what I mean, and that it was way, it was beyond what it should be handling, and just it is the only time Bommer spring hinges break like that is when there's far too much tension. I've been to the plant. I know the people in the engineering department there. They have the best engineered spring hinge on the market because of the science of that proprietary spring inside of there. Okay. I was speaking to the gentleman one time, the head of engineering there. I says, how many cycles? Because this hinge is a grade 1 hinge, which means it will last 1 million cycles. I says, how many did it get to? He says, I don't know. I unplugged the machine at 7 million. So it's one hell of a hinge. Yeah. And the only time that any of us hear about a hinge spring snapping is when there's far too much. Now, how old do you think the hinge may be?
Well, the house was built in 97.
Okay, so there's going to be fatigue on the material. So
right.
20 plus years, maybe it was over tension to begin with. Yeah.
And it could be that the roll pin snapped on the bottom that holds it in place too. I mean, I can't get it apart to tell. So. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a simple mechanism. It in the way that this hinge, that spring inside of there is actually not round. The spring itself, while it's a coiled spring, the profile of it is square, which is really fascinating to see that component in a whole bushel load of them. So I would relocate that middle hinge, put it at the top, get your spring hinges down below, be mindful of your 4 holes of tension going to 90 degree. If you find that it's not getting the job done, you can consider adding another spring hinge, or consider the possibility that spring hinges aren't the answer, and hydraulic control is the answer, like a door closer. So there you go.
Well, and I suspect that the reason that there were 2 hinges on here is, like you said, maybe they had one and it wasn't closing properly, so they put 2 in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you said normally it's just one, huh?
No, well, not necessarily one. One is I would say unusual because one doesn't really do a lot of work with all of the stored energy gone in the last 15-20 degree of close. There's no, all you're hoping for at that point is momentum. It's and then overcoming the 19 square feet of air that you're displacing and the friction of the latch bolt hitting the strike and how the door is hung. Is it true plumb level and square? One is just if you want to kind of keep the door from being left open and get it kind of closed to the point where it won't latch. And if you have an average door, 3068 residential door, 2 will probably do it. But I like more spring hinges. Not only because I'm a spring hinge salesman, but because I think of it as a tugboat. You've got, you don't go fast, but you can pull a lot of weight with it. There's torque. Sure. And when you've got more spring hinges, you got more torque on reserve. So if you find that you're struggling with getting it to close and latch without having it just release and then inertia momentum to get it closed, add another spring hinge so that you're not rocking the door in the jam.
Okay.
Bam, bam, bam.
And so you're talking some people would actually put 3 of them in then?
Absolutely. On doors that are mandatory to get closed and latched, like you'll see in hotels, those are fire-rated doors, and there are 3 cardinal rules to fire-rated doors. The 2 important was it must be self-closing and it must be self-latching. If you don't have a latched fire door, you don't have a fire door. So in hotels, you'll see 3 spring hinges. And you ever notice, boy, those hotel doors slam, don't they? They do. It's because they need them. They need them to latch because it's a fire door. It's a path of emergency egress, and that corridor has to be protected from fire for that duration.
Well, and the thing that I have noticed in this home is it's a very, the door is plumb and everything is square, and it latches and closes very securely. But if we should have our garage doors open, and if the sliding glass door, off of the kitchen, and that's where this other door opens, it's like a wind tunnel.
Yeah.
And it'll grab that door depending on which way the wind is from, and so it takes some power to close it.
Yep.
If the garage doors are closed and the sliding glass door in the house is closed, it works, just fine in the 5 years that we've been here. But so I'm wondering through, visiting with you, if I should have you send me 3 of them just in case.
Well, you'll be able to take advantage of setting less tension so that you're moving the door slower but still have more reserve energy. And at the cost of whatever they are, $18 a hinge, it's, not the end of the world.
No, exactly. And that's where I was going to say, if I could, pay overnight shipping, I would do that too, because it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, well, right. It's a couple of reasons. That's it's not stock, and plus Bomber won't ship direct a small order.
They won't. That was my next question. You were way ahead of me.
Yeah, no, they won't drop. If you ordered 8 of these, they'll drop ship it because it'll meet the minimum, or 10 of them might be the minimum, whatever it is. But it's not 3. But the good news is we'll take your order. We'll collect payment. We're going to order with Bomber. They're going to come here, and you're absolutely going to get these hinges.
Well, that's what I was hoping for, and like I said, I've talked to a lot of people, this morning, and you by far know more than any of them that I've spoken with thus far, including the people at Bomber.
Well, you may have spoken to Judy or Ann, but the people at Bomber, when the head engineer retires there, the lumen rating of our industry will noticeably dim. The man there in engineering, he is an important individual, and I have tapped his shoulder far too many times. But they're very good people at Bomber. I've been to both of their plants. They are the only hinge that's 100% made in the United States. The only hinge. The only that the pen they write on is made in the United States. That's their thing, and they get all the military work as a result of it because they're the only one who can meet the spec.
One other question that I do have for you, on a lot of these, right, they look like they're the same configuration, but some say that they're 1/4 inch and others say they're 5/8. What is the difference? Is that the pin size? Must be.
No, it's the corner. So the radius corner is like an Eisenhower dollar, or just a nickel or a dime, really.
Mhm. Yeah, more the size of I'm going to say a nickel or a 1/4, but yeah, it's a curved corner, and the way they look. But so, what is the 1/4? Oh, that's the 1/4 and 1/2 inch has nothing to do with the pin size in the hinge itself.
Not at all. It's the outside corners of the hinge can be 3 options: square, 1/4 inch radius, or 5/8 radius.
Okay.
And that 22 part number you've provided is specifically 5/8 radius.
Right, and that's what it looks like.
Oh, okay. So about the size of an Eisenhower dollar, not a dime. Okay, a little bit bigger. I got it. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Well, and that's when I was looking at hinges, I'm going, holy cow, I didn't realize there were so dang many different ones and different specs, and nobody tells you what the specs mean.
Yeah,
until
absolutely.
You.
Well, you try to call the door manufacturer who used that profile, you literally get nowhere. And thankfully, Bomber makes hinges for almost every manufacturer. They don't make them for one company. I don't remember their name. They will if you order 100 of them, but it's a completely special setup for them to do that. And it's, I've been to many factories, and I've seen, let's say, hollow metal doors manufactured several dozen times, in fact. And when I went to see how hinges are made, I realized how dastardly of a process that is. Making hinges is hard work. Making door panels are easy compared to hinges. So I walked away with a new, appreciation for the process.
Absolutely. Well, and like I said earlier, when I was talking to Bomber, and they gave me distributors, in our area, judging by our phone number, and neither of them had really even heard of, they handle a couple other Bomber hinges, but they've never really heard of this one and didn't know anything about it. And are these still used in a lot of applications or not? Are they just that rare?
I think that's more of a question of how much market penetration Permador had or has. I don't see the 22 variant very often, and all that means is it's a confluence of the exact dimensions of your screw holes and the corner treatment. The confluence of those two, to me, are unusual. So unusual that I don't recall the last time I sold a 4322. But that's just, it could be, that in your neighborhood, you've got 30% of all the doors were supplied by Permador from whatever lumberyard that was back in the late 90s.
Well, and the screw hole configuration is different than most hinges. I mean, it's a 4 screw holes in each side, and they're laid out differently than a lot of them. They're kind of a zigzag pattern.
Yeah, and that's what makes it the Permador pattern. The answer to that is drilling out, removing your hinges, drilling out the existing holes, gluing and inserting dowel rods, getting the new hinge, mortising it flush, getting the new hinge, pre-drilling holes, and installing hinges with screw holes in a different location.
Sure. And I don't want to go to that hassle. That's why I was looking for the same hinge to replace.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, too, I noticed when I was taking the one hinge off so I could look at the numbers that, all of them are Phillips screws except for one that had a square head screw, and that screw was like 2 inches long where the others were like 3/4 inch long. I don't know if they come like that or if that was just who built the place did that.
Is that on the jam side?
Yep, sure is.
And is that closer to the stop than the outside of the opening?
It's on the outside of the opening, and it's the second one down from the top.
Okay, so the second one down from the top is, let's look at that template. Second from the top. Yeah, okay, but is that closer to the barrel or further away from the barrel?
Further away from the barrel.
Interesting. Because if it was closer, logic would tell us that they will run that longer screw because it will get through your hinge, get through your jam, and into the stud behind.
Right.
I would have tucked that screw closer to the barrel to have a better chance of hitting that. But you will certainly see that sort of accommodation made for certain pieces of hardware. Not so much hinges, but certainly strike plates where you want to be sure that you're hitting the studs behind the jam. Exactly. That would be the logic for it being there. That'd be the only reason you'd stick it there.
Well, and I knew it was going to be different because, like I said, all of the other screws were all Phillips head, and this was a square head. And it was in there tight, I'll tell you.
Yeah, well, that's good. That means the hinge won't come loose, and the client, whoever was doing it before you, might have had a problem of the screws chronically coming loose, which they do, and said, "Forget this, I'm going to sink it into the stud behind." And the person got lucky sinking it through the one that he sunk it through. Right.
But and then, like you said, the hinges that go into the door are a machine screw, not like a wood screw like the rest, but.
So you have a metal clad door then?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yep. And it looks like this hinge comes with metal screws, or machine screws, and wood screws, I think is what it said in the specs on it.
Yes. that we're going to make sure I'm setting a note to order entry, so when I transfer you to them, they'll know how to specify this.
Oh, okay.
Half wood screws and half machine screws. Got it. Okay. All right, I'll send you over to order entry. They know what you want. They've got all the instructions. Her name is Jessica. She's awesome. And it will, patience will prevail. You'll have a brand new opening at that point. So there you go.
And I've got a really good memory, but it's just short. What was your first name again, please?
I apologize if I didn't say it. My name is Richard.
Rich.
Architectural Builders Supply hopes you have enjoyed this program. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.